Welcome. This is the sun today for the 20th of July 2021. The reason for this video is the sun is getting very active. It's producing a lot of sunspots and beginning to look as though it's going to produce some flares shortly. So what has been going on? Well, we've just had another C1 flare, and that brings the total of flares so far this month as 1 X flare, 3 M flares and 20 C flares. So it's been a very active month with regard to flares so far. The sunspot number is at 52 with an average so far through the month of 35, and if that is maintained, then this will be the most active month from a point of view of sunspots that we've had so far this cycle. Several new sunspot groups are emerging, and we have the promise of more coming over the East Limb shortly. Let's quickly go through the sunspot groups. This is the picture of the sun at the moment. You can see there are several big sunspot regions in the northern hemisphere and a couple in the southern hemisphere. Active region 2842 is an old established region, has transited the full disk so far. Active regions 2844 and 2845 are dying regions in the southern hemisphere, and those you could just about see the plage regions surrounding them. Active region 2846 and 2848, and I'm assuming that's what it's going to be numbered, has just rotated over the east limb of the sun. So these are older regions that are coming back into view. And we've had a newly emerged region, which I've tentatively named 2847, just in the northeastern hemisphere. That seems to be growing fast as well. As I said, there's possibility of more regions to come. A bright area is behind the southeast limb. I've circled it here. This is the advantage of looking in these high temperature X-ray lines, and these regions have very high loops associated with them, which means you can see them several days behind the limb. This region here will appear on the disk in a day or two and seems to be quite active, as you'll see from the movie. Plus, of course, there may be new regions emerging both in the northern and southern hemisphere at any time on the disk. Here is the movie taken in the AIA 131 angstrom line. It's a high temperature line, and I direct your attention to the southeast corner, that is the bottom left corner, where there's a new region coming over the limb that looks quite active. Somewhat surprisingly, the solar wind speed is up to nearly 500 kilometers per second. I'm not quite sure why. There's a weak coronal hole here, but I wouldn't have thought that that would have increased the speed of the solar wind significantly. But that's what's happening. We'll see what that leads to. I doubt that unless it changes a great deal, we will get any geomagnetic activity out of it. So what can we conclude from all of this? We've gone 75 days without having a spotless day. That's a very long run, and that's only 19 months into solar cycle 25. It took 28 months for solar cycle 24 to hit that mark, which means that solar cycle 25 is going to be much more active than solar cycle 24, at least it implies that. Flare activity is on the increase. As you can see here from this flare power index, the amount of flare activity has been increasing. I've defined flare power here as 100 times the number of X flares plus 10 times the number of M flares plus the number of C flares. And so you can see this last month has been by far the most active of all of them. This means that the probability of there being a grand solar minimum this cycle is fading rapidly. So until next time, stay safe and goodbye.